Benedict Spence is here. A very good and very warm welcome to you, Benedict.
Good morning.
Greetings of the season. How are you? Are you feeling Christmassy?
Oh no, I'm just waiting for this year to end.
Really?
This has been in politics.
I wouldn't be too hasty because I think next year's going to be actually even worse.
To be honest, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be pretty bad for the next couple of years, but you know, that's democracy for you. We made a calculated choice, and it turns out to have been the wrong one.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
When is ever the right one? I'd like to know when that happens.
Well, yes. I mean, when was the last time anybody elected a government actually was full of hope?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it was, actually. It was 2019, when Boris Johnson won that massive landslide with 80-seat majority in 2019.
Yeah.
I genuinely thought, this is going to be great. He's going to come in, and in the new year, we're going to kick off, you know, leaving the European Union. We're going to get Brexit done. We're going to be able to import all kinds of, you know, really, really interesting investment into Britain. Britain will stand alone. And then suddenly COVID appeared.
Yeah.
And that was the end of that.
It really was the curveball to end all. To end all. And, you know, any optimism that any of us had went right out the window because actually, of course, even a government that was sort of ostensibly as pro-freedom as that one was, went into isolation mode, went down into the bunker, was convinced that COVID was going to kill everybody. All the boffins that were working with Dominic Cummings were absolutely convinced we were all going to die.
Yeah.
This was the big one, and therefore your liberties had to go.
Yes.
And you know, along with that, any chance of economic growth or reform, that just went. And that really was a sad old time, but it's been progressively worse since then. There's been no attempt to reclaim that optimism that we had in 2019.
Not at all. I mean, every week since this Labour government has been in and they got elected on July the 4th, things have just gone from bad to worse. When you thought they couldn't get any worse, this week we got the Waspi women scenario. We got, you know, Keir Starmer basically appearing before a committee asking if he had any regrets. We'll play that to you in a minute. But this morning, the front page of the Times, the Bank of England has sounded a warning that the economy is stagnating following Rachel Reeves' budget after businesses responded by raising prices and cutting jobs. I mean, every business now that you talk to is saying this is a disaster. Yeah. We can't hire anybody. We can't afford to pay the new national insurance prices that we're being asked to pay by the government. Yeah. And frankly, we're going to be... I spoke to a guy the other day who runs a bunch of businesses which are relatively successful, but sort of what you might call medium, you know, in terms of the numbers of people they employ. Yeah. 2 of the 8 businesses he runs, he's shutting down because they simply aren't economically viable anymore. Yeah,
and you sort of combine that with Angela Rayner's workers' rights bill and all that sort of thing. It's going to make it harder to sack people, even if they are incompetent, and you think... Yeah. Well, what actually is there to incentivise people to hire people? No. It's just getting worse and worse.
There isn't any incentive whatsoever. No. Let's have a sort of... We're going to do a few of these. We're going to take a little meander back through the years or through the months of this Labour government. And this was Keir Starmer singing the praises of Rachel Reeves a few months ago as the first woman Chancellor ever.
It will also be the first budget delivered by a woman ever. That is a moment of pride. When Rachel Reeves stands up, she will be making history. And I can tell you, young women and girls across the country will be watching, they will look up, and they will notice.
Do you think his wife told him to say that? Because, you know, quite frankly, it's embarrassing. That will be a moment of history. He was so pleased with himself, wasn't he? With the first woman Chancellor. Well, you haven't had a woman leader yet, matey, so don't get too carried away. Yeah. And she has been nothing but an unmitigated disaster.
If you were to take her as the example, we will never have another female Chancellor.
No, and we definitely shouldn't. If this is the idea of a woman running the country and a woman running the economy, I'm afraid it's the worst advert for women doing that ever.
But it's a sign, I think, of how vapid they are, that actually this was taken as a moment. Not what's the content of the budget, what's going to be the long-term effect. Oh, it's a woman, and it stood there, and all the other girls are going to be happy.
Women and girls are going to look and see, and like, let's play it again, actually, because look at the smile on his face. It's so fake. It's like, you know, never mind the Ming vase strategy. Have a look at this. Let's have a look again.
It will also be the first budget delivered by a woman ever. That is a moment of pride. When Rachel Reeves stands up, she will be making history. And I can tell you, young women and girls across the country will be watching, they will look up, and they will notice.
And she certainly has made history. According to the Bank of England, they've now downgraded their forecast for the economy, said that they now expect 0 growth in the final 3 months of this year. Zero growth. So let's all have a round of applause for Rachel Reeves, the first woman Chancellor. Well done, darling. You've taken us down to net zero in the economy.
The adults
Tremendous.
the adults are back in charge.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. Pay no attention to what's going on behind the curtain.
Just incredible.
And in case of emergency, import more migrants.
Right.
That's basically the strategy.
And how about the other big story this morning on the front pages? My Lord Mandelson, the Prince of Darkness, who denied this, by the way. Last time I saw him, he was on Laura Kunsberg's show, and he went, "Oh, absolute rubbish, nothing to it. There's no truth to it at all."
Yeah.
He's going to be made Britain's ambassador to the United States, making the first political appointment to the role in almost half a century.
Do you know what? I don't feel so bad about this.
I don't mind Mandelson.
Yeah. I think he is competent.
Yeah.
There is a reason that we are all so terrified of him.
Yeah.
He is a much better appointment than some of the appointments that have been made by this government.
Yeah.
Let's be clear, the former Transport Secretary was not a good appointment.
Louise Haigh, yes.
Yes, the current...
The convicted fraudster.
The current Foreign Secretary is a disaster.
David Lammy, comical Lammy, yes.
Yeah, so as they go, this is not the worst one, but doesn't it say an awful lot about the quality within the Labour Party right now that Starmer has had to go all the way back to the Blair era to a not a particularly great figure from the Blair era and gone, this is probably the most competent person that I can put in front of Donald Trump. This is the guy. I think that really does speak to, frankly, the hollowing out of talent in our politics.
But let's not forget that Peter Mandelson is also a man who had to resign his job in the cabinet under Tony Blair because of a rather, shall we say, ill-judged loan that he got from Geoffrey Robinson. He was a very wealthy a man who was a member of the Labour Party as well and an MP who helped him with his mortgage so that he could buy a £4 million house in Notting Hill.
So, a really good person to have in charge of the trade deal with the United States.
I mean, I'm not suggesting for a minute that Lord Mandelson is in any way corrupt. Obviously, that would be wrong.
Yes.
But what I am saying is that he's not a man who's unadjacent, shall we say, to scandal.
Yeah. I suppose him and Trump will therefore have something in common.
Possibly so.
Nice
Apparently he's a close ally of Morgan McSweeney, Number 10's Chief of Staff. Now, I was told, and I'm sure you were as well, Morgan McSweeney, one of the cleverest men with one of the biggest brains in the world. Now, if he's actually running Downing Street and he hasn't been replaced by some kind of cipher, he's not as good as he thinks he is. Because if he was, we wouldn't be hearing all these terrible, terrible things about what's going on.
Well, of course, all of this stems from the election results. Everybody's saying he's the mastermind behind the general election. You think, well, there was just a decapitated pander where the Conservative Party used to be, and you just had to walk round it.
You literally have to walk around it, put your X in a box, and that's your business strategy for, for the
and
election.
that makes him an absolute genius in modern politics.
Yeah.
You know, who are we to disagree
But do we not
with that?
find this quite a lot? And over the years, you hear all these people, and we all know them. You meet them in this sort of the smoky, what used to be called the smoky corridors of Westminster, the smoky pubs of Westminster, and people go on about these characters who are really, really clever, very clever people, like Dominic Cummings, very smart man, absolutely brilliant. And there he is. Oh, what's that? Oh, there he is running out of Downing Street because he's frightened of COVID. You know, to get in a car and drive his son to a place where nobody's ever heard of.
The desperately sad thing is, Cummings actually is clever for people in Westminster.
Well, he's clever.
But even within that, there is this sense, of course, that there are sort of higher IQs working all the time, and it's just not true. And as we're now sort of elaborating, Dominic Cummings is the absolute brain box of a man who couldn't quite figure out that A follows B and very simple things about lockdown and how the public might respond to that.
And he was also so weird that he couldn't get along with Boris Johnson's wife.
Couldn't get, well, I mean,
And
Boris Johnson...
he had to sort of blow the whole thing up.
I always thought that was, you know, what a brilliant strategist to think, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pick a fight with Boris Johnson's other half.
Right.
And I'm sure it'll work out for me.
Yeah, because he should leave her and just stay with me.
He should listen to me and my other weirdo friends.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm sure the civil service are going to be really keen to work with us, given that I have spent all this time insulting them and now threatening to sack them, even though I don't have the power to do it.
Right.
It was very unedifying.
Not the work of somebody you would say, generally speaking, was intelligent.
No. And if we're being honest, for those listening at home who have never had the great fortune of bumping into the people who occupy the formerly smoky corridors, there's a lot of this. There's a lot of talking themselves up, talking each other up, a lot of backstabbing, there's a lot of gossip. When we talk about sixth form politics, that actually is very often what we mean. It's not necessarily the ideological sort of, you know, going up in the dispatch box and talking about Marx or Gramsci or whatever it is. There's a lot of this. It's just egos, it's just backstabbing. It's a lot more childish than you would hope it would be. But that's the reality.
But that is the way they operate, because that's all they know in many cases. Let's take a little visit to the Parliamentary Liaison Committee. Sir Keir Starmer, or Sir Keith Starlin, as he's sometimes known, appeared there yesterday and he was asked this question.
Is there anything that you would do differently if you were starting out now, knowing what you know?
No, we had to do tough stuff. We're getting on with it, and I'm very pleased to be delivering from a position of power rather than going around the division lobbies losing every night. I've had too much of that.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Sir Keir. He's very happy to be delivering. Delivering what exactly? Delivering zero growth, delivering no possible improvements to people's lives. He keeps talking about we had to make these tough decisions in order to make people better off. We're not better off, right? No. So forget that. His other reasoning is we have to do this to bring the waiting list down in the NHS. Also not happening.
I actually believe him, though, when he says he wouldn't do anything differently.
Yeah.
I don't think he has the imagination to think what else he would do differently. I think that this was all sadly very predictable. You've spoken about this.
Yes.
Every other presenter on this radio show has spoken about what was going to come down the line, and many of your guests, that this budget was not going to cause growth, that a lot of the plans that they were putting forward were unnecessary and in fact were actively damaging. Lo and behold, things are not going particularly well. But I'm not surprised at all that he would sit there and go, I wouldn't do anything differently. Of course he wouldn't. He's the arch-proceduralist.
Do you think he's one of those people that also can't admit that he got something wrong?
Possibly.
Because
also,
he was asked this by Harry Cole the other day. You know, have you made mistakes? And he sort of glossed over the question, didn't address it at all, didn't say, well, you know what, actually, I feel as though probably I could have done things slightly differently. Not really a mistake, but possibly some of the things that we did were not handled as well as they should have been. Anything to give people something to hang on to actually understand that he is human after all. But he's not, is he?
I suspect that that's probably right, that he's not really capable of introspection in that sense. And this is, of course, one of the big criticisms of him from the left of the party, is the way that he dumped Jeremy Corbyn, having backed him. But if you then
his
ask
friend
him,
Jeremy Corbyn.
But if you ask him from any other position, do you regret it? He doesn't necessarily regret it. No, he sort of tries to worm his way around it. And it just gives him the impression of being a very slippery character, being somebody who is evasive, and he doesn't even have the good grace to be entertaining whilst he does it. At least Boris Johnson would be slightly amusing. But is he not also the complete antithesis of what they sold us? You know, the bag of goods that we were told we were buying if we voted for Labour, which I didn't, by the way. I suspect you didn't either. No. Was this kind of, you know, grown-ups are in charge, a very, very sort of, you know, autocratic, very sensible man. Nothing will happen. There will be no scandal. There will be absolutely no brooking of the rules. There will be absolutely nothing other than complete and utter service to the country. And it's been nothing but the opposite of that. As soon as he got in, we found out that he was in receipt of getting free clothes from Lord Alley, free spectacles, clothes for his wife, clothes for, you know, Angela Rayner, clothes for Rachel Reeves, clothes for Sue Gray's son, and money for all sorts of MPs, freebie holidays to America, and it was nothing but sleaze. And that's how it started. Yeah, that was straight off the bat. That was the first week. This sort of low-level sleaze combined with ideology, basically. So it was going to be things like that on top of VAT on school fees and all these sorts of things. And I think a lot of people were very concerned straight away that, oh, hang on, this is not what we were promised at all. But why would it have been? Actually, even when New Labour came in, there was a lot of, you know, there was actually a lot of controversy about a number of the MPs from very early on. And they also led almost straight off the bat with fox hunting. And you kind of sat there going, well, what's that got to do with anything? It's an ideological point. So they're in it for themselves. Oh, and by the way, they're going to get some of their pet peeves done first. And we're going to recreate the country in our own image. Yeah, so for that, there's farmers and inheritance tax because they don't like farmers. They, you know, even though farmers are perhaps the biggest group of working people in this country, they absolutely loathe them because they're not metropolitan elites and because they all wear tweed and barbers. So you got that. You got the VAT on school fees, which everybody said at the time, well, this looks like it's going to cost more money than it's going to make, and they went, yep, well, we're going to do it anyway. And that's just kind of been how it's been ever since. I mean, even, I think, what was it, Wednesday, there was some announcement that they were going to scrap teaching children Latin in state schools. Now, most people might think, well, Latin's not the most important thing. To which you go, yeah, but this is, the school year's already started. This has already been budgeted for. What are you getting rid of it for? You know, state school pupils learning this, and this is all supposed to be about getting rid of elitism. And you think, right, so you're only going to give that access to private school kids now. You're going to do, and you think, well, what was the point of that? You could have carried it on till the end of the year. No. They did it during the year because it's ideologically driven, and that's the point. These things might only be very minor, sort of in the moment when the headline comes out and you go, oh, that's a bit odd, but never mind. You add it all up. It's deliberately destructive because it's what they believe to be morally right. Nothing actually to do with what's in the financial best interests of the country or anything like that.
No.
It's what they feel inside is the right thing to do. Ever thus has it been.
Absolutely extraordinary stuff. It is Friday, of course, and we are doing the last show before Christmas. And even if we weren't doing the last show before Christmas, it would be Gaff Friday. We're going to play a gaff right now. This one, because it's been requested by Pat. Please, 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 says Pat, can we see the fantastic Mike Graham losing it over the racist dogs again? Merry Christmas to all of you. Let's have a look. Woof. Dogs are racist, according to the Welsh Labour Party. Deary me. Welcome to Britain. It's Friday, thank God. We can all have a couple of days off, and we'll be bringing you more and more over the course of the next few hours, and clearly loads of gaffs, of course, as well, from the home of common sense. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Sorry. I can't help it. Apparently, that's breaking news. The economy has grown by 0.1%. I'm sorry, between July and September, according to the Office for National Statistics. The world's gone completely mad. Those were the good old days, of course, when growth was at least 0.1%.
A titanic 0.1%.
Brilliant. But now, of course, we got the Bank of England today saying there's zero growth. It's not even 0.1%. It's actually 0.0% now. Thanks, Rachel.
I can't wait for this, though. It'll be spun eventually as, rejoice, comrades. We've been liberated from the tyranny of economic growth.
Exactly.
The market no longer has a hold over us.
Growth isn't everything. Have a look at this. This is Matt, who got in touch with us yesterday because we were asking for. We weren't actually asking for it, but it sort of happened. People started singing songs, rewriting lyrics of Christmas carols and all that. This is Matt's voice note about Sir Keir Starmer.
It's beginning to fall apart for Starmer. Everywhere you stroll, take a look in at number 10. It's chaos once again, as they're sucked in through their imaginary black hole. It's beginning to fall apart for Starmer. The toolmaker's son knew such a bore. And the most likely thing you'll see is the policeman that will be at your own front door.
Very good. Matt, thank you very much indeed. We'll take some more of that. We're here till 10 o'clock. Benedict Spencer's here as well.